A fascinating look inside the spin game here in Washington. Deirdre, I know you're shocked that they're worried about whether anything's been poll tested yet, but clearly the Republicans think the Democrats haven't done enough poll testing on their message. They think they're winning.
All right, Peter, thank you very much. Nothing like an open mic. Our chief Washington correspondent, Peter Cook, there with us from Capitol Hill. Well, from macro concerns to tech, investors finally have details on Twitter's filing. As we have been reporting, it is seeking to raise $1 billion in an IPO. As for the Twitterati, if you like, Jack Dorsey, Ev Williams, Dick Costolo, all celebs. Our senior West Coast correspondent, John Ehrlichman, with me now from L.A. So, John, each of these people are future millionaires. We know that at least, right?
Some might even enjoy that billionaire status. And, you know, there's been a lot of conversation today about what some of the people behind Twitter stand to be worth because of this IPO. But there's also a venture capital angle, and obviously you talk a lot about that here on Money Moves. The fact that this company attracted some very early money from a variety of Silicon Valley players. And just to recap, you know, yes, the entrepreneurs behind Twitter, most of them have a large stake in the company. Ev Williams, who has a 12% stake, and Jack Dorsey, who is the executive chairman, who has just under 5%, and even Dick Costolo, the CEO, who was an early investor as a result, has a meaningful stake in the company. But you also see Peter Fenton there, of Benchmark, who was an investor when this company had roughly 30 employees total, and you see that Benchmark is right up there in terms of owners of Twitter stock, along with players like Spark, a variety of well-known venture capital firms.
Okay, John, we are going to leave it there just for the moment. We do have breaking news from D.C. You do, in fact, have the Senate Majority Leader, Harry Reid, speaking now.
Embarrassing to the American people. State of Nevada is losing the revenue as a result of the shutdown, as all states are losing revenue. This, though, is just not an economic issue. It's also an issue about national security. The government shutdown is hurting our ability to enforce the sanctions on Iran, to gather intelligence, to operate our armed forces, just to name a few. Treasury Department has furloughed 90% of the employees in the Office of Terrorism Financing and Intelligence. That's their charge, and they're not able to fill that. Of the 175 employees in the United States Government Sanctions Monitoring Agency, there's only 11 out of 175 that are working today. Undersecretary of State Wendy Sherman said, and I quote, "Our ability to enforce sanctions to stop sanction evaders."
Senate Majority Leader there speaking, Harry Reid. We're going to take you back to D.C., or just a different part of D.C. Our chief Washington correspondent, Peter Cook, is there. So, Peter, this is more or less consistent with the message that we anticipated, right?
This is the blame game happening here. Democrats blaming Republicans for not funding the government, for standing in the way, for having these federal workers who do such important jobs not on the job of the Treasury Department, the folks who do the sanctions. One example I heard earlier on the floor from Senator Mikulski, FBI agents who are on the job right now using their own money to fill gas tanks of FBI vehicles. That's the kind of stuff they're talking about. The response from Republicans, Deirdre, over in the House is, we're passing individual spending bills for agencies like this. Democrats are standing in the way. The problem for Democrats is, again, that it's piecemeal. It's not the entire government. That's the stumbling block right now. We're no further along today than we were several days ago.
Peter, thanks as always. Our chief Washington correspondent, Peter Cook, there with me from Capitol Hill. Well, we are going to get you back away from the macro to Twitter and bring in an early investor. Tim Sullivan with me now, CEO of MicroVentures. The company has invested $3.5 million in Twitter over the past year and a half. He has also invested in Facebook and Yelp. Tim with me from San Francisco. So, Tim, first up, what do you think of the valuation?
I think the valuation suggested at about $13 billion. Seems pretty reasonable. Looking at Facebook 2 months ago at $45 billion, at over $120 billion today. Given Twitter's revenue numbers, given Twitter's growth rate, given Twitter's actual really unharvested or unyielded data that's coming from their unlimited tweets coming in the numbers of trillions around the world over time, I think that they've got a lot to grow into and a really bright future, to be honest.
Okay, so Tim, you mentioned Facebook, and I'm just bringing this up because you are an investor in both. I mean, it's a foregone conclusion. I probably shouldn't really jinx it. Twitter's IPO will go better than Facebook's, right?
I would hope so. I think Facebook, unfortunately, made a number of mistakes. Certainly they've recovered from them, but I think Twitter's team appears to be a lot more professional going into the IPO. I think that they've done a great job managing their company and their secondary market trading over the last few years. Probably better than anyone I've ever dealt with. I think that if they limit the number of shares coming out of the IPO, if they don't have any technology issues such as Facebook did, and if they limit insider selling, they could really have a pretty fantastic IPO.
Tim, going forward, what do you think of the ad model? Because this is something that Facebook had to crack as well, just focusing, at least in Twitter's sake, on in-stream ads, leveraging these kind of natural occurring social activities, which is essentially what the site is all about.
I think the ad model is obviously working pretty well for Twitter. I think more importantly, they've really cracked the code on the mobile side of things, something that Facebook hasn't quite gotten around to, or they've been trying to figure out. But again, I'd really like to focus more on the data that has unbelievable value that really hasn't been harvested yet.
Okay, Tim, sorry, we had a little technical error there, so I didn't hear the last part of what you said, but I heard you referring to Facebook and the fact that it took it a while to crack that mobile code. You feel like Twitter's obviously different.
Yeah, Twitter has really been a platform that started in the mobile environment on smartphones, as opposed to Facebook, which was really a PC or even a tablet-based format. But Twitter being the closest thing to a mobile operating ad platform, I think it has huge advantages and a huge runway.
Tim, thanks as always. Glad to chat with you. Tim Sullivan joining me there from San Francisco, CEO of Microventures, an early investor in Twitter, in Facebook, and in Yelp. But when we come back, the co-founder of news and sharing site Reddit will be with us. Find out what he thinks of Twitter's IPO and what he sees as the next generation of social. Alexis Ohanian will join me. Plus, one of the largest PE and VC firms is based in China. It invests primarily there and in India. $5 billion under management. I'm going to be speaking with one of the managing partners who is going to tell me what kinds of tech companies specifically he is backing. That's ahead on Money Moves.
First, Bloomberg.
Twitter's IPO filing reveals it is on track to generate about $500 million in annual ad revenue, that is, by year's end. With more on the business model, we bring in Alexis Ohanian. He is the co-founder of the social news website Reddit. He is an angel investor, New York Y Combinator mentor and activist. He is also the recent author of the book Without Their Permission. You are a busy guy, Alexis, so very pleased to see you, that you make time for us here on Money Moves. I want to talk about the book. I love, actually, the kitty pictures of you in here. Those are pretty rich.
We don't need to put those on the screen.
You know what? We can. We'll just wait a few minutes. But as far as being the co-founder of Reddit, you know what it's like to found and then run a social site. What do you make of Twitter's ad model? What do you make of the P&L?
Well, you know, Facebook had a lot of skeptics when they came out about whether they'd be able to make money, and they are really showing that there is a model there. Twitter, I really think, can make this a profitable company. It certainly has the scale, right? The question is...
Yeah, it's like 200 million users that are basically addicted.
Yes, very actively tweeting. I know you've got a Twitter account, I've got mine. And it is, though, you know, time will tell whether or not this is the platform, though, that carries on, whether it really can be something that sustains, because, you know, this industry is great because upstarts can come up real quick and start drinking your milkshake, but it's also a challenge for incumbents because disruption is always just a few years away.
That's something bigger picture that I want to get to, because you talk about that in your book, which is basically a how-to for the next generation of entrepreneurs, and you're basically saying don't be afraid to disrupt, and also don't be afraid to be disrupted. But as far as Twitter goes, I mean, you have to assume that the founders and the management and the employees, they want this to work. They want this to stay around for a while. What do you make of the fact that, okay, mobile ads, Facebook arguably cracked the code, that Twitter is going to have a little bit of an easier path to follow to make money?
There is something very, very valuable about the fact that Twitter can capture someone's attention the way it does with such a steady flow of content in a non-obtrusive way. You know, one of the things, the problem with a lot of Facebook advertising, especially as it moved to mobile, was all those ads that were on the side, it just physically doesn't work on a small screen. Twitter is designed to be a steady flow of content, and putting ads in that flow, so long as it doesn't screw up the user experience, and it seems like it won't, could actually really drive some conversion.
How annoyed do you think, though, the average user is going to be for in-stream ads, or let's say native advertising, which we know really isn't coming from our friends, even though it's a good fake?
Yeah, it is a challenge. I mean, we certainly err on the side of looking out for our users' best interests. We certainly err on the side of sort of user experience above everything. And we will see, you know, we heard earlier, Twitter has a lot of value in their fire hose, in all of that data they collect and know about what's popular, what's trending. We think about the same thing with Reddit, actually. There is a lot of value there. And if you can find a way to plug that into services that want to know what is up and coming, what is popular online, you know, you're the newswire for the World Wide Web, and that's a valuable position to be in.
Pretty powerful. Alexis, stay with us. Going to come back, talk about your book. So we are going to take a quick break, but we'll continue the conversation with Alexis Ohanian in just a few moments.